Well, hello, everyone. A little bit later tonight, and I do apologize for the slight unexpected delay. Thank you for being patient with me. Um, and the delay is kind of where I want to start today. Now, why am I going live an hour and a half later than I am normally scheduled to? Well, something rather funny happened to me this morning as I woke up. As many of you know, I was up late last night. I did my inaugural Nitwit stream. I was up late and I kind of slept in today. I'm not gonna lie. I took it easy and I slept in and I woke up and I happened to have a message in my inbox. And I posted this publicly. So I'm not revealing anything that I haven't already revealed, but here's what it said. Hey Carlin, I'd like to talk to you sometime. I thought your video of Adam versus Tim and Lydia was very well done. He may be upset that yours was a little ahead of his scheduled disclosure, but honestly, you did him a favor. I can tell you that you have very accurate intel, and that is exactly what happened. This is referring to the video and the live stream that I posted recently discussing the real reason that Adam was fired by Tim Pool from Timcast IRL. And I got to tell you, I'm not going to go into too many details right now, but I spent the better part of my day speaking with the person who sent this message. This person did work for Tim Pool for a while. I have validated this person's identity. I know who they are. They are a very credible source. And the reason that I'm sharing this is because the reason I went live a little bit late today is mostly because I am, well, quite frankly, reeling from the information that I've been given today. Again, I'm not going to go into it just yet. You guys, we're doing a little bit of a tease today. But the reason that I bring this up, listen, there is not a single human being in the world that is perfect. There's just not. If you expect anyone to be perfect, you will always be let down because every human being is flawed. And what even is perfect anyway? I think that most people do try to do the very best they can in most situations, but how they perceive the very best thing might not be the same way that you perceive the very best thing. I think this particularly is true when it comes to influencers. Maybe I'm just taking a point of personal privilege at the moment. We're going to get into the news in a second. Don't worry. I've got a whole bunch of news pulled up today. We're going to talk about serious stuff. But I think one of the things that I have really kind of solidified in my mind lately, I I have felt very validated on the track that I took, on the path that I chose to go down with this whole YouTube content creator thing. Um I wasn't always sure this was the right idea. I wasn't always sure that unapologetic authenticity was the right idea. I wasn't always sure that it was going to work out. I wasn't always sure it was what people wanted. I wasn't always sure that it would make a meaningful separation between me and other content creators. I have to tell you, the last couple of weeks have really, 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 really been validating. And that might not mean anything to you guys, and I understand that. But I decided to take a different path in June of 2021. I decided I didn't want to do outrage content. I didn't want to focus on these clickbait titles. I wanted to be nuanced. I wanted to be thoughtful. I wanted to talk about things that I do think are important and that I think are happening, and sometimes I do feel like I sound like a little bit of a conspiracy theorist sometimes, especially when we get into the socialism stuff or things like that. But I always have really strived to be nuanced in what I'm doing, to tell the truth, even when the truth is difficult to tell, even when I know it's gonna blow back in my face. And I guess in the last couple of weeks, especially, I've really come to see how few people doing this do that. I thought I was going crazy for a long time. I really did. I would look at some of these other creators and say, "What do you see that I don't? Why are you doing what you're doing? This seems foolish to me. It seems ridiculous. This isn't real. You're creating a mirage." I really thought I was going crazy. And I think, I can when I first got into this, like in 2020, when I was really kind of around all of these conservative content creators, you see the world very differently than you do when you put yourself on kind of like the outside looking at it, having had the experience of being in it. There are a lot of people in this game, probably content creators that some of you follow, that are only doing it for the money. A lot. And you can make a lot of money doing this, and we're gonna talk about that today, in particular with regards to Turning Point USA. A lot of people were outraged when they found out that Ibram X. Kendi was making, like, $25,000 for an hour-long speech. Do you think conservative influencers don't make that? Of course they do. Of course they do. If you say the words they want you to say, and you ignore the things that are inconvenient, you will set yourself up to make a metric ton of money. And that is why people sell out so easily. I think there are authentic people in this space. I just think they're few and far between. And a lot of the most popular influencers in the game are very, 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 very different people when the camera's off. There are people who influence the influencers that have a vested interest in selling a certain narrative. And oftentimes, the thing that you need to pay the closest attention to are the stories they're not telling you. This is where a lot of people get messed up when it comes to the influencer space. It's not about the stories they choose to tell. That doesn't matter as much. It's about the stories they don't choose to tell. Those are the things that you need to look into. That's why it is so incredibly important for you to do your own research. Don't trust people like me. I will try my best. I really will. But most people in this space are not like me, guys. They just are not. I built my own business. I know that I can always make money if I need it. I have that experience. Most of the people doing this is the only thing they've ever done, and they don't know that they can make money a million different ways. It's easier to give in and to say the things that they want you to say and to tell the stories they want you to tell and to ignore the stories they want you to ignore and to rake in the boat ton of cash that comes with that. It is significantly easier to do that than it is to go and make money in other ways. Significantly easier. And that's why they do it. Most of these people, not all, but most, are not good people. Most of these people are deeply flawed. And the reason that I went live about an hour and a half late today is because I was sitting here reeling from the information that I was given today. I'm a pretty forgiving person in that I do look at all human beings, including myself, and I know that they're flawed. I do. And, you know, it is hard not to be disappointed, though. So I just want everyone to be aware. I want everyone to be aware that things are not always as they seem. And and sometimes people make regrettable decisions because they're more interested in money and power than they are in the truth. There may be more coming out about this. There may not. My perspective is that if anyone related to Tim Pool in any way, and by related, I mean has been connected with his little operation, if they want to come and talk to me, the door is open. I will keep everything you tell me confidential. I will not share it because it is not my story to share. But if you want to share it, then I'm happy to help you tell your story. There are a lot of stories that need to be told. I'm not suggesting that I think he's a bad person because I don't necessarily think he is, but there's a lot of stories there that need to be told. Sadly, right now they're not mine to tell. And I do hope that people find the courage to tell them at some point because the truth does matter. The truth does matter. The influencer space does not matter. The Chrissy Mare fandom, all that bullshit that we did last night, that doesn't matter. That is not real. That is the land of make-believe. Some people enjoy it, and it is fine for people to enjoy it. But just know that that is nonsense. And the truth still means something. And I feel very blessed that I ended up taking the path that I did on this journey. I ended up developing an audience of people who care about the truth more than they care about hearing the talking points that will make them feel good. And I'm really grateful for the people who've talked to me today. Because when you feel like you're alone in a space and you're like the only one that's taking this perspective, it is a little maddening. It really is. And I feel as though I'm exactly where I need to be. And and I don't have any regrets. I took the harder path, but I think I'm being successful at it. I may not be wearing a low cut top today. I may not be considered an influencer. But I think I'm making it work, and I'm making it work with the help of all of you here today that are joining me live or that will watch this later. Guys, please mount that like button if you appreciate what I'm trying to do. Um, and let's get started. Well, let me just say before we dig into the news, I want to welcome Trendlin as a member of the channel. Thank you for supporting it, Trendlin. I really do appreciate it. And then Tommy, thank you for the early super chat. Tommy says Charlie Kirk is the most famous Puritan on the right. You have Puritans on both the left and the right. On the left, they come in the form of extreme SJWs. Tommy, I think this is absolutely correct. In fact, in my book, Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against the woke insanity in your life, which you can find linked in the description below. You can find links to purchase at activelyunwoke.com. It's on Amazon. It's on all the normal places. I actually write about this in the book. And I wrote about this in the book when it wasn't popular to say this. I write about how there is woke on the left and there is woke on the right. Charlie Kirk, absolutely woke on the left, or excuse me, woke on the right. Woohoo, they're so similar. I have a Freudian slip. Charlie Kirk is absolutely woke on the right. When I say woke, the definition of the word that I use is authoritarian. Woke means authoritarian. There are people that are going to disagree with me about that definition. I don't really care. I have watched more of their training and more of their videos than pretty much anyone else on the planet. I know how they're defining it, and that's what matters to me. So when you think woke, don't think social justice, don't think progressives. It includes that. But woke to me is about authoritarian. And that's why I titled my book Actively Unwoke. Not only because it was a play on Robin DiAngelo, but being actively unwoke means being actively unauthoritarian. Because I want the free thinkers here. I want the people who don't want to control other people or make other people a slave. All right, let's dig into it. And I've got a whole bunch of stuff we're going to talk about today, guys. I've got a couple things pulled up. And let me just tell you what we're going to talk about today. This is going to be kind of like one of my old news shows when I used to like cover different things in the news. The big topic we're going to talk about today is Turning Point USA and Charlie Kirk. And some of you might not like what I'm going to tell you, but Charlie Kirk has had the wonderful epiphany that you need to get votes to win elections. And quite frankly, I have some questions about Turning Point USA. You know, MSNBC sent out this tweet the other day. And listen, is it NBC? MSNBC? Yes, it is. They are the uber woke left of the uber woke left. I am not suggesting that MSNBC is a credible source for almost anything. However, a broken clock is right twice a day. And MSNBC is actually making a good and fair point here. Turning Point USA, a group created to attract young conservatives, has taken in millions from donors with little to show for it. I want to talk about what Turning Point USA is actually accomplishing for the tens of millions of dollars a year that big-time conservative donors pump into it. I think this is a fair question. When I see people tweeting after the midterms saying things like, if only people under 30 weren't allowed to vote, we would have had a massive red wave. And yeah, that was tweeted. I'm pretty sure it was retweeted by Jack Posobiec. If only people under 30 weren't allowed to vote, what the fuck has Turning Point been spending their money on? The entire point of Turning Point USA was supposed to be to activate youth voters. What are people getting for that donations? We're going to talk about that today, and I think that it is actually a really important question to ask. Another thing we're going to talk about, we're going to do some good news. I saw this tweet earlier. A group of Moms for Liberty backed school board members were sworn in Tuesday. Within 2 hours, they fired the superintendent, the district's lawyer, banned critical race theory, and set up a committee to determine books to ban for pornographic content. Now, I want to be very clear. I am not on board with the book banning bullshit. I have made my point resoundingly clear that I do not support the book banning, and I don't want to hear from you guys. It's not book banning, Carlin. It's removing porn from libraries. I don't want to hear it. I have written about why I think that is a bad point of view. I have done multiple videos about it. I don't want to hear it. However, I will celebrate wins when we get them. And when school boards are actually doing productive things like firing superintendents, firing the district's lawyer, and banning critical race theory, all of those things are far and substantially more productive than the books in the library. So I'm still going to celebrate. I don't think the book stuff is a good idea. I think it only gives the left ammunition to use against us, and I don't think it makes long-term change anyway. But the rest of it is really great. Hi, Betty. Welcome. I'm so glad you subscribed to the channel. Guys, please, if you're not subscribed to the channel, maybe follow Betty's good example here. And hopefully mount that like button as well while you're subscribing. So we're going to talk about that. And then I got to tell you guys, this is a little bit of a feather in my cap. I'm really excited about this. Lawsuit filed against City of Seattle for hostile workplace caused by pervasive racial equity training. Did you know that as of yesterday, I have now had 2 lawsuits filed based on news stories that I broke? I was the very, very, very first person to talk anywhere about how the city of Seattle was doing segregated employee training. You can find that tweet right here. It happened on June 16th, 2020. You can see it went massively viral. Actually, how many views did it end up getting? Let's see. It only got 662,000. Wow, I would have thought it would have been more. But I was the very first person to talk about this. I was the very first person to provide evidence for it. And as of yesterday, this is the second lawsuit that has resulted from news stories I broke. And also, in addition to that, this is the story that got Chris Rufo involved in the fight against critical race theory. It was this right here. When I was breaking these stories on Twitter, when I was the first person to post about this stuff, one of the things that I was hoping would happen is real journalists would come in and pick up the news and actually behave like journalists. Because remember, this was back in 2020. This was months after I red pilled. I was reeling from being in this world. I had no idea what was going on. And I was just posting news out there, hoping that real journalists would take it from there. Chris Rufo was the only real journalist to follow up on this. He was the only one. A lot of journalists reported it. Ben Shapiro talked about this. This was the first time I was mentioned on Ben Shapiro's show. But Chris Rufo was the only journalist to follow up on it and actually do reporting. And this is the story that launched Chris Rufo into the spotlight. So I'm pretty proud of that. The other news story, if you guys don't know, is I was the first person to break the news about Gabrielle Clark's son being forced to admit he was an oppressor in order to graduate from high school. And that resulted in the first federal lawsuit against critical race theory in schools in the country. So if I've done nothing else, I've done those 2 things, and I have to be pretty proud of that. And congratulations for the person who filed this lawsuit. I do hope he'll be able to speak publicly someday. He can't yet, but he has said that he will be able to at some point. And so hopefully we'll be able to bring him on the channel and have a little chat about that. So guys, those are the stories that we're going to talk about today. Now, a few quick announcements before we get started. I just want to remind everyone that we have movie night in my supporter Discord on Sunday at 8 p.m. We're watching They Live. If you've never seen They Live, now is the perfect time to sign up to be a supporter to see They Live, and you'll get access to the supporter Discord in a number of ways. I will tell you about that in a second. I really, guys, like, I know that this movie seems cheesy if you haven't seen it yet, but you need to see this movie. It's got a little bit of something for everyone, and it is highly, highly, highly relevant to the world today. And I can't wait to watch it with my supporters. We have great conversations in movie night, and I think it's going to be really great. Also coming up in my community, you know, guys, I don't really like to be controversial. As you guys know, I'm definitely not a controversial person, but I am hosting a Unabomber book club coming up on December 3rd. December 3rd at 3 p.m. We are reading the Unabomber Manifesto, Industrial Society and Its Future by Theodore Kaczynski. So pick up your copy. Come and join us for book club. We're going to have a great chat. And I'm excited because I've been told up and down and left and right that he may have made more sense in this manifesto than some people would like to let on. You know, I'm not condoning the Unabomber bit, but everyone is capable of having good ideas. And so we're going to be reading his ideas and we're going to be thinking about them. And that's what we're going to focus on for our book club coming up on December 3rd. If you would like to get access to those and a whole bunch of other perks for being part of my supporter community, there are a couple ways to do that. And actually, I'm going to say today, just as in honor of Trendolin becoming a member of the channel, I'll extend this to YouTube channel members as well. I will give you guys access to the supporter Discord as well. So if you become a member on my YouTube, then I will make sure you have the link to join the supporter Discord so you can join us for movie night. But if you want access to the supporter Discord for movie night and book club and the 2 Zoom calls that we do every single week, there are a couple places that you can get access to that. Number one is Patreon. You can join up on Patreon anywhere from $5 a month all the way up to $250 a month, depending on how much you like me on any given day, I suppose. And you can get some perks like some cool swag, a great t-shirt. And if you don't like, I like Patreon because it offers different levels. And I don't think I'm going to get banned on Patreon. I'm not really actually that controversial. But I do like the levels and I like some of the features. But if you don't like Patreon, if you don't want to go that route, that's totally cool, man. Come and join my locals. My locals is really where I'm going to spend the most time. You're going to get the more personal interaction from me. And it is the most safe. Like, I have the best community. I really do. I love my locals community. We are actually connected as people, as individuals. We have great chats. We talk about everything. And so really come and join the community, try it out. You can do $5 a month, $50 a year. You can make a one-time gift, whatever works for you. But either Patreon, locals, and also the YouTube channel membership will get you into my supporter Discord for movie night, but only Patreon and locals will get you access to the 2 weekly Zoom calls that I do every week with my community, which if you've never been to one of our Zoom calls and you're one of my supporters, come to one of the Zoom calls, man. The Zoom calls are great. They go on for hours. On Monday, we call Monday calls the Marathon Monday because it starts at 7 p.m. and it is not uncommon that it goes till midnight. And really, Mondays are magical for Zoom calls. We have such great conversations. I really want everyone to get involved. It will restore your faith in humanity. So those are ways that you can support my work and get involved there. Now, I want to just answer Red Room Diecast question. Did Tim Pool ever respond to your Bulldog video? No, he didn't. And he really probably should have, because now he's fucking pissed me off. Now he's pissed me off. And now I just don't care anymore. Because you know why a lot of creators haven't talked about the stuff related to Tim Pool is they all want to kiss his ass. I no longer care because he didn't cover the Bulldog video and he's never followed up on it since. So, too bad, so sad. Whatever happens, happens. I ain't going to take responsibility for it. All right, I want to go back. Oh, speaking of Tim Pool, he claims to be a milquetoast fence sitter. He claims that his audiences are libertarian. But why is he speaking at a Turning Point event if his goal is really to appeal to libertarians? I brought this graphic up originally. This is on Charlie Kirk's Twitter. This is talking about like the next Turning Point conference. I brought this graphic up originally to show you the amount of people that Turning Point flies in for one of their conferences. I didn't even realize Tim Pool was on this graphic until about 2 seconds before I went live, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Okay." And that's going to become important in a second. But where this started off is today, Charlie Kirk, and he's been doing this for a couple days. He tweeted out about 8 hours ago, "I miss politics where the better arguments and the hardest working candidates won elected office. Now it's a matter of which political machine can capture the most votes in a 30-day window. So be it. We will now have to beat the left at their game." And I'm like, you know what? Breaking news. Conservatives have discovered, finally and at long last, that winning elections requires getting votes. Maybe we have finally departed from the time where conservatives hold people up to purity test standards, where conservatives tweet things like, get out of our party, you're not wanted here, where conservatives tweet things like, libertarians are not conservative, because every time they do this shit, they drive away voters. You would think that that might be the epiphany that Charlie Kirk would have, right? It's like, you know what? If we're pissing people off and spitting in their face and not making our side appealing, maybe people won't vote for us. I don't know, guys. Like maybe it's just like I just have a hunch that if we weren't telling people that we didn't want them in our party, that maybe they might consider voting for us. We could actually win them on the battleground of ideas. But no, it really just seems like Charlie Kirk is doubling down on ballot harvesting. Okay. He tweeted this yesterday. The Rubicon has been crossed. I don't like it, but it's time to win. We will build the most sophisticated and aggressive legal ballot harvesting operation in America and never let this garbage happen again. And then he also tweeted this interview with this gentleman, important lessons from Pastor Rob McCoy on ballot harvesting. You know, my my perception of Turning Point USA is that the whole entire point of Turning Point USA was not to create a giant ballot harvesting operation, although I suppose fine if they want to do that. I guess I'm not really judging that. But it was my impression that the whole point of Turning Point USA was to turn out the youth vote in favor of conservatives, to go onto college campuses, to set up programs in high school, to make sure that there was a counterbalance to the indoctrination of the left. And if that's really the goal, I actually think that that's a noble one. Even though, like, I'm not voting for them, but like, I actually think that that's a noble goal that makes sense. The problem is that Turning Point USA is not doing the things that it claims to do. And and I don't think that this really like it should be shocking to anyone. Listen, I toured with the Walkaway campaign for 6 months, right? I will tell you that Turning Point USA has probably 10 to 20 times more money than the Walkaway campaign did. That's not an exaggeration. Every major donor in the conservative space, and by major donors I mean the really big ones, we're talking about the six-figure checks, the seven-figure checks, things like that. Every major donor in the conservative space donates to Turning Point USA. They have an ungodly amount of money to work with. But it doesn't really seem like they're investing their money in the right areas to be able to accomplish the mission that they claim to have, which again was to turn out the youth vote. And I think it's worth considering for just a moment the criticism that one of their mortal enemies has, which is MSNBC. And again, I'm not suggesting that MSNBC is a credible news source at all, but a broken clock is right twice a day. And I think that this is a fair point. MSNBC tweeted out the other day, Turning Point USA, a group created to attract young conservatives, has taken in millions from donors with little to show for it. Let's just read. This is from the Readout blog. Unsurprisingly, the GOP's youth whisperers failed in the midterms. Republicans didn't achieve anywhere near the success they had hoped to achieve in this year's midterm election, in spite of historical trends suggesting the GOP, as the out party facing an incumbent president, would have the upper hand. Ultimately, younger voters played a larger role. As a CNN analysis found, a look at the data suggests there probably wasn't a surge in youth participation relative to the rest of the electorate, but it does suggest that Democrats defied election expectations this year because of a historically large age gap that saw younger voters overwhelmingly back Democratic candidates. In other words, young voters may not have turned out at historic levels in terms of sheer numbers, but the ones who turned out, by and large, weren't rocking with the Republican Party. What the ever loving F was Turning Point USA doing with all that money if they weren't working on youth voter turnout? This is their one effing reason for being. is to turn out the youth vote for conservatives. What were they doing? Well, we're going to talk about that in a second because I have some numbers for people to consider. Turning Point USA is a prime example. The Arizona based nonprofit, led by right wing extremist Charlie Kirk, okay, I don't think he's a right wing extremist. I think he's a jackass. I don't think he's an extremist, has been lauded by conservatives as the preeminent voice of young, budding conservative movement. Seemingly every Republican with hopes of winning an election or mere adoration from young people has kissed Kurt's ring and promoted themselves before Turning Point's audience. Donors have plunged millions of dollars into Kirk's operation with little to show for it. The organization, backed by a slate of election losers in the midterms, from extremist Senate candidate Blake Masters in Arizona to House candidate John Gibbs in Michigan, who once argued against women's suffrage. Peruse Kirk's Twitter feed over the past week, and you can see him go from being extremely bullish on the GOP's hopes for the midterms to extremely downtrodden and conspiratorial over his party's failures. I'm not going to comment on that, but I do think that the point that MSNBC is making here is incredibly, incredibly valid. Listen, I have been incredibly critical of the walkaway movement, particularly since I left it, because I no longer believe that the walkaway movement cares about getting Democrats to leave the party. There is absolutely no evidence that the walkaway movement is doing anything to get Democrats to leave the party. And just like there's no evidence of that, there's no evidence that Turning Point USA is gaining any ground at all in terms of the youth voter turnout. These are like two-pronged tactics. You're supposed to get Democrats to leave the party. That's not happening. You're supposed to get young people to actually go and vote conservative. That's not happening. Where are the donations going? What are they doing? And why isn't any conservative asking questions about this at all? Because we're talking about tens of millions of dollars. Betty White says, I heard Blexit had issues money-wise. Oh, don't even get me started on Blexit. How many events have you seen Blexit do? How many events have you seen them do? In 2020, and we actually talked about this a lot with walkaway people. In 2020, Blexit did one event. One. And do you know what that event did? They paid to fly people into Washington, D.C. to go to the White House, all wearing the same t-shirt, and listen to Donald Trump give a speech. That was it. One of the reasons I involved myself with the walkaway movement in 2020 is they were literally the only organization out there trying to do anything during the pandemic. They were the only organization holding rallies. They were the only organization putting any effort at all into getting people excited. They were actually trying to be productive. I don't think they're productive anymore, but then they were. Blexit did one rally, singular, and they had to pay everyone that was there to attend. That's real. We're going to talk more about this in a second. I'm going to show you guys some stats, but I just want to just look at this article from The Guardian. And again, this is a biased news source. So this news source does not like Turning Point USA, but it still has some interesting information in it. Let's look at these highlights. Founded in 2012 by then 18-year-old Kirk and headquartered in Arizona, where it built a robust base, now backing Trump-endorsed candidates like a former Fox News star for governor. Turning Point USA's revenues have soared from $4.3 million in 2016 to almost $39.8 million in 2020, according to public tax filings. Turning Point USA boasts it has allies on more than 2,500 high school and college campuses and is the fastest growing youth organization in America. Then where were all the votes? And no, Ronald, no. I don't care. First of all, you guys have no evidence that there's fraud. There's zero evidence that there's fraud. But the point that you are making to deflect from the point that your influencers have failed you has nothing to do with the fact that Turning Point USA did not do its one and only job, which was to turn out youth votes. How much are the staff paid? Deborah is asking the right questions. Deborah is asking the right questions. So I found this. This is from March of 2021. And we can get, I didn't have time to look it up today, but we can get their tax filings. We can easily answer this question, but this seemed to do a pretty good job. Turning Point USA is a tax-exempt nonprofit 501c3 that advocates conservative principles on high school, college, and university campuses, in convention centers, blah blah blah, established in 2012 by Charlie Kirk, who receives nearly $300,000 in compensation, flies first class, and has a discretionary spending account, as do all the officers, according to Form 990 submitted with the IRS. And the Form 990 that they're looking at is from 2019. We can get the Form 990 now. We can get the updated Form 990. These things are publicly available. No, Ronald, you have no evidence. You're just raging in the chat. Now, guys, I have 2 rules in my chat. Don't be a dick and no whining. If you want to keep whining, Ronald, you're more than welcome to keep whining, but I promise it's not going to go as well for you as you think it's going to go. So I'm going to suggest you stop. Don't be a dick, no whining. Otherwise, you won't be in my chat very long. I promise you that. Then show me the evidence, Don. Listen, right now we're talking about an actual quantifiable problem. If conservatives just want to go, fraud, 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 me! That's what you want to do. You are never going to win another election again. Do you hear me? Oh, Ronald. Oh, I am, huh? I am. You're right. You're right. Well, you're blocked, buddy. Goodbye. If these are the tactics that you want to take, you are never going to win another election again. Never. This is an organization that is responsible for turning out conservative youth vote. And if you're more angry at me for declaring correctly that you have zero evidence of fraud than you are with Turning Point USA for taking in tens of millions of dollars of donations of your money and not doing anything with it, then your priorities are misplaced. The reason that Republicans lost the midterms is they stopped listening. They didn't listen on abortion at all. They rejected any evidence that this was going to come back and bite them in the ass. And they just screamed fraud all day. And then they said, there's no reason to even vote anyway. And they took their toys and went home. And then they lost and they wondered why. You lost because the Democrats fortified the election, wrote about it in Time magazine, told you exactly how they fortified the election. And instead of doing exactly what the Democrats did, you just read for years. 2 years the Republicans had to fix this problem. 2 years. They had the entire game plan laid out for them in Time magazine. Literally, all they had to do was copy exactly what the Democrats did. And they didn't even figure that out until today, apparently. They finally figured, oh, we just need to listen? Oh. But no, keep reeing and calling me a narcissist for telling you the truth. Expenses were reported to be $25 million, but $7 million of expenses were to a grant to an affiliated organization, Turning Point USA Endowment, which operates out of the same office of Turning Point USA. Let's break down the expenses of Turning Point USA. $6.2 million, or 21% of their revenue, is spent on travel and conventions. Do you know what Turning Point USA does when they put on conferences like this? Do you know what they do? This is a giant suck of money. Every one of those speakers is going to receive compensation. Every single one of those speakers is going to receive first class travel. Every one of those speakers is going to be put up in a really expensive hotel. Every one of those speakers is going to be catered to. There's going to be a blown out party. These conferences are basically parties for conservative college students. That's what they're spending their money on. That's what the money is going to, is the parties. 20% of their revenue is spent on compensation, with Charlie Kirk getting $300,000 a year for doing what? What is he doing? 7% of their revenue is spent on printing, publications, and video and digital. 4% on office expenses, 4% on fees, 4% on other expenses, 1% on grants, 1% on advertising. What are they spending money on that is directly related to youth voter turnout? How are they turning out the youth vote? Do you see anything in this breakdown that indicates to you that Turning Point USA is doing their job? What I think Turning Point USA is doing is throwing parties and paying people wild salaries. Excuse me. Getting a cold. What are they doing? Tens of millions of dollars a year goes into this organization. And conservatives have literally nothing to show for it. And if you aren't asking questions about that, or if you're ignoring this and you're just screaming fraud, 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 when there is no evidence that fraud exists at all, then you're going to keep losing. One of the things that conservatives really suck at is holding their own tribe accountable. William of Essex says, "We lost the youth vote by about 30 points in the midterms." Listen, I don't necessarily mind that Charlie Kirk has had the great epiphany that playing by the rules that the Democrats are playing by is maybe not the worst idea in the world. I don't mind that he's had this grand epiphany. However, has Charlie Kirk been self reflective at all about the utter failure of his organization to do the one and only thing that it was built to do? They threw parties. That was what they did. They threw parties and they paid themselves giant salaries and they went on their influencer speaking tours and they probably made even more money on their influencer speaking tours. But they did not do the one thing that they were supposed to do, and that is turn out the youth vote in favor of conservatives. And conservatives need to be asking why. You need to hold people like Charlie Kirk accountable for doing the things that they say they're going to do. And if you are not going to hold them accountable and say, Charlie, why did we lose by 30 points when we gave you $40 fucking million a year? $40 million. Because you promised us that you would set up all these chapters on high school and college campuses, and you promised us you would activate the youth vote. And the whole point that Turning Point is named Turning Point is because they were supposed to turn the youth vote in favor of the right. We gave you $40 million a year to do it. What did we get for that money? Those are the questions that need to be answered. Are any conservatives going to ask these? I don't know. But I feel like I'm gonna have a lot of in my comments saying, "You're a horrible person." Well, I'm not even on your team, dude. And I think that these are fair questions to ask. Don't you? So if I were conservatives, these types of organizations that are doing nothing but lifting up their chief influencers and making sure their influencers have their nice podcasting studio and they're going on all the shows and they're doing the speaking tour and they're selling the books and they're being stars and celebrities in the conservative movement and they're followed around by groupies and entourages. I might demand some results from them. I'm just saying, I might demand some results. And if they don't give you results, then stop giving them your money. It's really that simple. So we'll see what happens there. But let's talk about something a little bit happier. So there we go. So I normally am ambivalent about school boards. And the reason I'm normally ambivalent about school boards is because, well, number one, most school boards have no power over curriculum at all. Most school boards just do not have that power. They have power over budgeting. They don't have power over curriculum. And so, generally speaking, I don't necessarily think that school board is the end all be all that conservatives make it out to be at all. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it can be productive. I think that they can make important changes. And I also think that it is a really important symbol. But most of the time, when people get elected to school board, they sit back and they don't end up doing anything. Well, not the case here. And again, I give Moms for Liberty a fair amount of shit because I'm not on board with the book banning. And yes, I do think it's book banning. And here's the thing about the books. You remove one book from a library, guess what's going to happen? A week later, another book's going to show up, and you're going to be constantly focused on what is that new book and getting that new book out of the library. And it's not even really that impactful. And you also make the books that you're removing from the library more appealing to the kids because the kids are like, why are they banning those books from the library? And if you think the teachers in the schools aren't saying to the students something to the effect of, you're not allowed to read this because these conservative activists are trying to ban books, and isn't it awful that these conservative activists are trying to ban books? You just make the books more appealing to the kids to begin with. So I'm not in favor of the book stuff at all. I think it's a giant waste of time. I think it is a giant suck of energy, and I don't think it's going to make any tangible difference. And I know that's not what many of you want to hear, but that is the truth when we get into brass tacks. However, if you're talking about firing superintendents and firing lawyers and firing school administration and banning critical race theory, oh, bestow my heart. Bestow my heart. I might be in love with this particular school board. Let's read what happened with this one and give me one sec because I'm just going to get a little bit more water because I'm getting a cold. I'm sorry, I'm getting a cold. God, we had our first snow in New Hampshire yesterday. Where the hell did this year go? Is anyone else feeling that? Like, where did this year go? I feel like it was January, like a week and a half ago, and now we're almost at Thanksgiving. I haven't even ordered a turkey yet. My God. I'm gonna be brining a turkey this year. I brine a turkey every year. I make a great brine turkey. Anyway, let's read this article. Moms for Liberty, back school board members fire superintendent and ban critical race theory. The Berkeley County, South Carolina School Board made several big moves in its first meeting after the elections. The board's former chair said it was a political witch hunt. On Tuesday evening, the Berkeley County School District in South Carolina swore in the board members who were elected last week, 6 of whom were endorsed by the conservative activist group Moms for Liberty. Within 2 hours, the school board had voted to fire the district's first black superintendent. Of course, because it's MSNBC or NBC rather, they had to get the fact that they fired a black superintendent in. When, of course, it had nothing to do with him being black. You know that. They fired the first black superintendent, terminated the district's lawyer, banned critical race theory, and set up a committee to decide whether certain books and material should be banned from the schools. In addition, the board members voted to replace the chair with Mac McMillan, a local attorney and one of the school board members backed by Moms for Liberty. The rapid moves Tuesday in the Berkeley County District, the fourth largest in the state, showed the impact of Moms for Liberty focus on electing conservative school board members and prompted uproar among some community members in attendance. Why would it prompt uproar? They were just embracing democracy. For all the failures that conservatives had in the midterms, and they had many, you got to admit they actually did a pretty decent job with school boards. They really did. They took over a lot of school boards. A lot of very pro school choice candidates ended up winning. At the state level, they ended up doing pretty good. At the local level, they ended up doing pretty good. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? Why if conservatives had all this momentum moving in their favor, why couldn't they just turn it out for the national vote? I just don't understand. How is it possible that so many conservatives showed up to voting conservative school boards, but, you know, didn't quite do it on the national level? Moms for Liberty said it had endorsed more than 500 school board candidates across the country this year, 49% of whom had won. Okay, well, I'd like to see that number be a little bit bigger, but that's okay. The organization's candidates were highly successful in Florida, but had mixed results in Arkansas, California, and Michigan, and other examples. Moms for Liberty celebrated the 6 candidate wins in Berkeley County as an example of flipping a school board in favor of people who value parental rights. 4 of the candidates, including McQuillan, were incumbents, while the 2 others were new to the board. They promised more curriculum transparency and fiscal responsibility and to stop the woke agenda. Moms for Liberty celebrated the board's first votes on Facebook, posting Wednesday 6 new board members cleaned house on their first job. Early in the meeting, according to a video posted by the district, the board members moved into executive session. Shortly after it returned, Kathy Littleton, one of the Moms for Liberty backed members, moved to terminate Tiffany Richardson, the district's in-house counsel, and retain Brandon Gaskins, a lawyer who was deputy chief legal counsel for the former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford. I just want to see something real quick. Oh, he was the okay, so this is the superintendent they fired, of course. Okay, now I understand. Moments later, McQuillan moved to terminate Dion Jackson, the black superintendent. Let's see. They moved to terminate Dion Jackson, who was appointed superintendent last year, and replace him with Anthony Dixon, who had worked in the district as an administrator. Dixon will be the district's Oh, isn't this fascinating? Dixon will be the district's second black superintendent after Jackson. So you're telling me that NBC made such a big deal. The school board voted to fire the district's first black superintendent. Okay. And then they replaced him with the district's second black superintendent. I keep confusing them with MSNBC, but this is just NBC proper. Is NBC really insinuating that replacing a black superintendent with another black superintendent is racist? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. Audience members gasped at the firing of Jackson and Richardson and shouted in disagreement. I shouted at a school board meeting and I got a no trespass order. Why are they allowed to shout at a school board meeting? When I shouted at a school board meeting, I was told I can never come back again. I just don't understand. All right, listen up. You're going to be respectful in this meeting. You may not agree with our votes, but I ask that you please be respectful and calm. What kind of example are you setting for our kids disrupting a meeting like this? Said McQuillan. Oh, he has interesting hair. But good for him. None of the school board members responded to emails or calls seeking comment. Good for them. Never talk like I really feel like this is a lesson that Moms for Liberty had to learn the hard way. When Moms for Liberty went on CNN like 9 months ago and talked about how they were going to ban books and then that interview blew up in their face exactly like I said it would. I feel like Moms for Liberty has learned a lesson in that they are now training people to not talk to the media at all in any way. Don't talk to the media. They will universally screw you over if you talk to the media. I understand people want to be on TV. I understand people want to be in the newspaper. Trust me when I tell you, as someone who has been on TV and has been in the newspaper and has gotten tens of millions of views on things that I've done, it is not worth it, man. I promise you, it is not worth being on TV. It is not worth it. Don't talk to them. They will paint you as a villain every single time, and then they will use it against you for the rest of your life. 30 seconds on TV, not worth the price you're going to pay for it. But we have to celebrate victories. We have to celebrate them where we can. And I got to applaud this school board, man. Going in like a bat out of hell. That's the only way to do it. Only way to do it. Yes, you are not trained for media. Even professionals get tarred and feathered. The media is sneaky. All right. So that's pretty great. But this is the one I'm going to, just take a moment to revel in a little bit. Just take a moment to revel in. Because as I said at the top, I'm really proud of this. I oftentimes don't reflect back on the amount of work that I've done in the past couple of years. But I really think that exposing information that leads to lawsuits is probably one of the most impactful things I've done. And I'm really proud of it. And I'm not going to apologize for being really proud of it. Listen, I know how hard it is to get people to cover news. I know how hard it is to get people to cover things that are actual stories. And I know how hard it is to find lawyers that will fight for you. Every single lawsuit that we get out of circumstances going on in the schools or in organizations with the woke ideology is a miracle. People don't understand how hard this is. And there are so many people that have lawsuits against the schools. There are so many people who have lawsuits against their workplaces that will never step up to the plate and file the lawsuit because of how hard it is. So this is the second time that a news story that I broke has led to a lawsuit. I'm really, really proud of it. And I want to read about this story, but first I just want to go back. This is the tweet I sent on June 16th, 2020. Fun fact, the city of Seattle is asking its white employees to voluntarily spend their day off in a training about their internalized racial superiority, and I've got documentation on it. Now, this is back when I was really new at this stuff, and I didn't even think to put the documentation in the tweet. But I did, to my credit, follow up with it. And you can see right here, this is an email that I had been sent from the city of Seattle. And you can see we're opening this Friday's week-long scheduled training on internalized racial superiority, a training for white people to additional white city employees. We'll hold the training on Microsoft Teams, blah, blah, blah. Tomorrow, many city employees will be using paid or unpaid leave to take a day of reflection and action. We're inviting city employees who identify as white to join this training, learn, reflect, challenge ourselves, and build skills and relationships that will help us show up more fully as allies and accomplices for racial justice. We'll examine our complicity in the system of white supremacy, how we internalize and reinforce it, and begin cultivating practices that enable us to interrupt racism in ways that are accountable to Black, Indigenous, and people of color, BIPOC, folks in our community, including our friends and colleagues. White employees are invited to sign up here, and so they'll know that they're joining them. Well, employees who identify as white, rather. So I broke this story back in June of 2020, and now it's a lawsuit, baby. Let's read about it. Today, Joshua Dimert, a former City of Seattle employee, filed a federal lawsuit against the city and Mayor Bruce Harrell for subjecting him to a racially hostile work environment. Passionate and devoted to his job, Dimer was hired by the city's Human Services Department in 2013. Hang on, guys. I got a cough. Hang on. I'm sorry. Again, getting a cold. I apologize. Despite being recognized for his excellent work, he could not overcome the city's overt discrimination against him through its race and social justice initiative. Dimer endured years of harassment and racial discrimination in the workplace. Some incidents officially sanctioned by the city were so severe that they created a racially hostile working environment. For example, he was pressured to resign from a position rather than take FMLA leave because he was told that taking FMLA would be an excuse of an exercise of his white privilege and would deny a person of a color an opportunity for promotion. That's not legal. That's not legal in any way, shape, or form. Let me make this a little bit bigger. On multiple occasions, upper level managers verbally told him and other department employees that new positions should be filled with people of color, particularly in senior roles. He was forced to attend training that demanded he acknowledge his complicity in racism, not based on his personal actions or beliefs, but because he is white. When he spoke up against egregiously racist messaging at a required workshop, his coworkers labeled him as a white supremacist, and belligerent colleagues continuously berated him about his race. Instead of supporting its employees and providing them with opportunities, the city of Seattle is encouraging racial discrimination and harassment through its race and social justice initiatives, said Laura DeAugustino, an attorney for Pacific Legal Foundation. Seattle employees should be treated as individuals with dignity and evaluated by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. And Pacific Legal Foundation is representing him at no cost, which is really, really great. And congratulations to them. I'm really excited to see this lawsuit go forward. And I'm really excited to have had some small part in it. And hopefully, more lawsuits pop up, guys. Listen, these are things I continuously talk about behind the scenes with people is that lawsuits are the best course of action to turning this back because it provides a way to frankly hold places accountable for this. And if people see that lawsuits are being won or even settled, they are going to be more disinclined to do this crap in the future. Suing people is the easiest way to get people's attention. And I know that it's a lot of work, and I know that it's a lot of risk, and I know that, stepping into a lawsuit is a crazy, crazy idea for a lot of people. It's overwhelming. It's intimidating. However, there are so many of you out there that have cases, and there are lawyers for you that will help you. And we need people to be brave. We need people to step up. We need people to get in the game because there are so few people doing this for real, guys. Listen, the reason I'm harping on Turning Point, do you know how much I could accomplish with $40 million? Do you know how much I could accomplish with that money? Like, mine, they did nothing with that money. They pissed it away. They pissed it away throwing parties. Do you know how much Chris Rufo could accomplish with $40 million? Do you know how much James Lindsay could accomplish with $40 million? Do you know how much Gabrielle Clark could accomplish with $40 million? These are important things to consider. And it's like I really believe that the thing that is going to lose us this battle is people putting the money and the resources in the wrong effing place. You can't win by putting your resources into the thing that's the most flashy, or the thing that's going to get the most clicks, or the thing that's going to get you on Tucker Carlson, because oftentimes those are not where the battle really needs to be fought. It needs to be fought at the institutional level, it needs to be fought at the policy level, and it needs to be fought in the places that are boring. I know that's not what people want to hear, but in order to win this, we're going to have to do the boring work, not the parties, the boring work. the activism, the getting out there, knocking on doors, having conversations, teaching people what's going on. We are so far behind because so much money and so many resources have been spent on the wrong things. This lawsuit probably should have been filed 2 years ago, if we're honest about it. I'm glad it's filed now. It's really great, but there's so much more we can do if we can focus on the right things. I just want to say thank you to Douglas. Douglas says, I really like this channel. For the big reason, Kay's critiques are actually quite on point and relevant. Kay brings a really fresh perspective to the scene. Very few places like that. I really do appreciate that, Douglas. I hope you guys stick around. Guys, that is all we have today because I'm losing my voice. But we're going to be back tomorrow, but we're not going to be back on this channel tomorrow. Tomorrow is Friday. That means we are heading over to youtube.com/activelyunwoke at 5 p.m. We're going to do happy hour. Happy hour is when we watch Woke training from start to finish. We watch the boring bits, we watch the cringy bits, and we have a couple of cocktails or drinks. I will be having beer, probably. And we talk about what's going on. And I firmly believe that people who watch happy hour know more about this stuff than any other person on the planet. I really do believe that. People who come to happy hour regularly know more about the woke ideology than every other conservative influencer, than everyone at Fox News, than every journalist, because we watch it and we listen to it and we watch all of it and we listen to all of it. And it's really important, guys. You need to see what they're saying because it's not what they're telling you on the news. It's so much worse. So we will be doing that tomorrow, youtube.com/activelyunwoke at 5. I am also planning on doing Socialism Saturday on my main channel, I think around 6 p.m. on Saturday. More coming on that soon. But for right now, I got to wrap it up. I'm going to go get some tea. I'm going to go kick back and relax. But please mount that like button on your way out the door. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And we'll see you next time, guys. Take care. Have a great rest of your day.